Well, hi there, it's Polly here with Mr. Snoots. Yay! And yes, we are still in Bali. Hooray! Last day. Meh. But you can see mighty structures looming behind me. A real pleasure today because this is one of my personal games of choice. This is Basic Role-Playing by Chaosium. This is the new edition. It was ordered from the Chaosium website. Now, Basic Role-Playing has been around for a while. It is a venerable game, and it is a beautiful game. And a new edition has come out, and that's based on basically 40-odd years of experience with that specific system. Right, so let's have a look. So, RuneQuest was one of the early role-playing games, actually. It came out, 45 years ago? Easily. And it was brilliant at a time when D&D was a pretty primitive damn system, to be honest. RuneQuest was absolutely arresting because it had a skill-based system. It used percentile dice. Skills had a value. You have to roll that number or less on percentile dice in order to achieve a success with the skill. But it had the dynamic combat because you roll attacks and you can then roll to defend yourself. So there was back and forth. I strike with my sword. Good, I'm parrying with my shield. There was a system of criticals. If you roll 1/20th of the value that you need to hit, you got a critical hit, which ignored armor and so on. If you got 1/5 of the value that you were supposed to be rolling against, that was a special hit of some kind. It was impale or a crush or a slash, depending on the type of weapon that you're using, and that gave you extra damage bonuses, which varied slightly depending on whether it was an impact weapon or an impaling weapon or a slicing weapon, etc. So armor subtracted from damage, you rolled the damage, armor subtracted from it. These are all new things. This is what RuneQuest pioneered. Now, that system was used and modified as a basis for some of the great classics of the role-playing genre. Things like Stormbringer, or, if you prefer, Elric, which took away the hit location system that RuneQuest used. RuneQuest used a D20 hit location system, so that when you hit, you actually got hit in the head or the arm or the abdomen, and that could actually be, it was great. It was very visual, sometimes very visceral, as you hit someone in the abdomen hard enough to go through their armor, completely through the hit points in the location, through the armor again on the way back out. It's yeah, blah. And so it was a bunch of 15-year-olds. Gosh, that was fun. But Elric went to a more generalized hit point system and brought in a completely different magic system, showing the incredible flexibility of what these guys had created. And Call of Cthulhu, one of the true classics of the genre. It's been adapted to create things like the game Ringworld. There's been superhero variants. There's been all kinds of things. That is the strength of the system. It was a solid core that could be adapted, and that's what basic role-playing does. He agrees. It delivers that core, but with all the options that these guys have tried and worked over decades, and it gives you many, many different options for how to massage this system to be exactly what you want it to be. So, alright, so first off, you can see this is a hardcover book. The production's beautiful. We have a ribbon and everything. Now, it's not, I'm just going to say, it's not overproduced the way so many damn modern games are, where every single page is turned into a full color piece of artwork. The value of this thing is text and artwork is there to communicate cool ideas. With that said, can I just put for a vote for coolest RPG artwork ever, the goddess Kali taking a selfie. I think, so there is some fantastic stuff in here. The core of the system. You have characteristics, strength, dexterity, constitution, size, power, charisma. Power is sort of willpower, but also spiritual power, spiritual energy, etc. Size is a physical size. These were originally done as 3d6 rolls and bands. That can vary a little bit depending on the setting, and that's, again, where we get to the genius of the system. The monsters and the creatures are characters too. They work under the exact same system you do. They have a size. They have a dexterity. What's an ogre? Well, it's pretty much very humanoid, but the size is upped, the strength is upped. It might be a bit clumsier. Definitely doesn't have much in the way of charisma. But what this system does is it gives you a thing called a damage bonus, which comes from averaging your size and strength. You look across on a little chart and you'll get extra damage depending on how huge and massive you are. So that ogre is going to do more damage when he hits you with club because he's 9 foot tall and, can carry a cow. So it plugs into this beautiful formulaic system that allows you to make any damn creature that you want. And also flexibility within characters and character races. So when you've rolled your characters, you're given a budget of points to split up between skills. This is a skill-driven game. You're given percentage points to split up. You are given here a whole series of different professions suitable for all sorts of different settings, and the guidelines for making and discussing your own. But in general, they've got it covered, which give you guidelines for how to spend those points to make an appropriate character. But they're always saying, it's your game, this is going to be your setting. If you've got a better idea, or if you've got something, hey, I want to do a space fighter pilot, I want to do a space smuggler kind of pirate, whatever. Yeah, okay, good. These are the things you would do. You get some other points that are spent for personal skills outside of the profession, where it provides kind of color and interest to the character, customizing it to be yours. Race and sometimes culture can give you modifications to some characteristics. They're very careful about the guidelines of that to avoid any of the all orcs are evil, or all these creatures, particularly they say watch intelligence. Never say all these creatures are dumb. So it's careful about putting in negative stereotypes while being just positive and upbeat the whole way. So anyway, you create a character that's got skill points split up. Now, different skills have a base percentage of using them. Like everyone sort of starts with a basic chance of hitting someone on the nose with their fist, or throwing a ball, or ducking, dodging. Some of the weapons have a basic skill in them too. It's quite easy to use a club or something like that. A rapier, it is not really easy to use, but so you add these points budgets onto the basics. Now we get into powers and settings and so on. So big part of this flexibility is, what are you playing? If you wanted to play, a science fiction, hard science fiction hammer slammers, you can. If you want to play superpowers, you can. If you want to play mad science, if you want to play Victoriana steampunk, if you want to play post-apocalypse weird kind of mutant worlds, you really want to do, He-Man. If you want to do dark sorcery, if you want to do, Elric and Melniboné, if you want to do horror, a modern adventure, samurai ninjas, it's all in there. So they have frameworks for the different types of powers and magic you might need. It has in there a system for magic, which is magical things done as a skill. You roll to activate them like a skill. You pay power for the strength of the skill to make it happen, and off you go. So that can be used for throwing blast kind of spells, for making protective spells. It's very similar to the magic you'll see in RuneQuest, but not quite. But there is a second magic system that they've offered called sorcery, which is a little bit more in the Dungeons and Dragons and the Stormbringer Elric line, where you have a grimoire and you can read from the grimoire. You can keep a certain number of spells in your memory at any given time, and you can cast from that, but you don't need to make a skill roll. It just happens, unless you're trying to overcome someone's resistance, in which case it'll be your power versus the target's power, usually. A little more on that later. But that system includes things like summoning demons and elementals and binding them into things. That was part of the fun in Elric. You'd make an elemental sword. This is my fire elemental bound into a sword. And the characteristics of that thing that you bind into something gives it hit points or can project fire, or it's a flaming blade that does extra damage, but you can make demonic stuff. So you can bring in a demon and you can make demonic armor. Stormbringer is a demon sword, all this sort of stuff. So pretty scary stuff. But there's lots of very cool spells in there as well, and some of these can backfire on you a little. So there's things that you can massively increase someone's characteristic with some spells, but if you roll a major fumble with it, it's permanent, and then they have to remove other characteristics to make up the massive bonus you put on one thing. And if you've got allegiances to strange otherworldly powers, their allegiance to kind of chaotic or black magic powers will begin, because now they're a creature of the magic. So they've got that in there, but they put a whole system in for psychic and psionic powers. But they put in a whole series for superpowers, and they put in a whole bunch of things for like mad science and creation and invention and so on. So if you wanted to play superheroes, if you wanted to do Star Wars, okay, well, what are Jedi powers? Largely psychic powers when you look at this. Yeah, okay, yeah, these are warriors that have got psychic things. So there are rules for how to give people budgets depending on the power level of kind of campaign you want. Do you want it absolutely over the top super heroic? Do you want it like, lower down? And again, at every point it gives you customization. Now, some superhero games, like the hero system, you basically need a degree in how to design a character. It can take days. This thing does it quite simply and very thoroughly. You have a budget, usually based on your power, that you spend. It costs you points to buy a power. The powers are listed for, they've usually got a major and a minor version. A major version of a power will cost you 3 points from your budget, a minor will cost you 1. And you can also pick some disadvantages and so on, and quirks to give you more things to spend, but gives you all that amazing flexibility and flavor without having to just niggle over thousands of little tiny points of things. So very, very useful for that. If you wanted to play a Venture Brothers campaign, for instance, where there's super science, superpowers, psychic powers, magic, hey, I'm Orpheus, etc., you can do it. It's all in here, and it all balances against each other. Only system you could do that in, because it's the only one that's designed to handle everything. So beautiful. They have lists of monsters to show you how these work and how they work as characters, and how to customize and change them. They've got weapons, everything from basically stone weapons up to all kinds of futuristic things is full. I can't really think of anything that you could add there, but it gives you, of course, the guidelines for making your own, guidelines for making magical weapons and so on. If you wanted to do a mecha campaign, it's got guidelines on how to use these rules to make the mecha in these same frameworks. Or doing Star Wars, you can do your space fighters this way, you can do your ships this way, hammer slammers, you can design your tanks this way. That's all in here in this wonderful, infinitely flexible system. They've added in many other options. So in games like Pendragon, there were ways of tracking personality traits of characters. They put that in there in an option if you wish to do that. It's a role-playing thing that you might find useful or you might not. No one might care. There are passion systems, which are you will again find them in Pendragon, and they've rolled those over into the latest RuneQuest, where your loyalty, your love, your hatred, etc. of things they're done like a skill, and if you feel that it might count in this situation, you can try and trigger it and roll it. So my hatred of this evildoer, I'm going to try and trigger my hatred, and if you do, it will give you a bonus in your skill rolls, in the battle or in the fight against this person. But if you screw it up, you might go into despair. In every case, it lays these things out, gives it to you, and says this may or may not work, but here it is for you. The same goes for all of the skill uses. They've said this is the base way that we did it. Here are different ways you may change that and customize it. Everything from like the initiative lines of combat, this is the base way. However, if you want a more tactical game, flip this bit and this bit. So it's like they initially said, in combat, you've got, you're going off order of dexterity. Everyone declares what they're going to do, and then in order of dexterity, highest to lowest, and then highest to lowest, you do it. So you could flip that. Everyone declares what they're doing, in order of lowest dexterity to the top, and then from highest dexterity down, they then do the actions. So if you've got higher dexterity, you get to see what everyone else is doing. There was traditionally like a conflict chart for characteristic versus characteristic, where you would look on a page, and if I was trying to struggle, my power versus your power, because I'm trying to take over your mind, essentially it would give you each a chance of succeeding and subtracting every 1 point that you had higher than your opponent. You got 5% extra on the dice. So if I'm trying to take over your mind and I have 11 power and you have 10, I have a 55% chance of overawing you. That's a very simple system. But again, they show you other systems that you can use if you don't want to use the chart. You can just both roll, and whoever gets the highest success wins. So if you've got a 50% chance and I've got a 55, and you roll a 49 but I roll a 51, I win because mine is a success and it's higher than the roll my opponent made. So at every stage, options, and explaining what these options do. So right down to things like the hit points thing. Do you want the hit location? It says this is quite exciting, quite visual, quite realistic. But if you give someone just aggregate hit points, the characters are more robust. They tend not to like, oh, my arm's off. It tends to leave more to the imagination. And so at every stage, it lets you customize this. So I would characterize this as the thinking gamer's universal game system. It's not combat obsessed, but it does combat extremely well. It does its skills and its powers, and it has just such infinite flexibility to use for any setting, any story you want to. And it rolls over into storytelling tools like the personalities and like the passions and so forth. If you're trying to emphasize, storytelling in your games, romance, these sorts of things, that can all be done. And all in one amazing volume. What are the changes over the previous version? Well, there was, a previous version of basic role-playing. It didn't have quite all of these options. It certainly didn't bring in things like the passions and the personalities. These rules also have things like allegiance to higher powers and what that might mean as you gain. That wasn't in the earlier versions. That came out through like Magic World and things like this, but they've rolled these ideas. So when was the last version? I think the last version was basically really early 2000s. So there's been another 20 years of experience on all these other systems like Magic World, Super World, and the revamps that were done to things like Call of Cthulhu and Call of Cthulhu 7th. So there's a sanity system in here, but it's the one from the new Call of Cthulhu, which makes way better sense. So it's drawn on the positive and negative experience of all of these games to make it better. So if you had the old version, get the new one. It's worth it. It's worth it. It is kind of a bit of a dense set of text to hand to someone. So if there was like a new player that was looking for something to run, I really recommend it, because it's actually at its heart, it's such a simple thing and you can do anything you want with it. But it is a bit of a shock because there's so many options. So a new player might need an older player to kind of explain to them that just come down and pick the bits that you want. That's the whole point of it. But it's not snowing you under with details and things like, say, the hero system does, where there's so much to learn and so many mechanics that have to be plugged in that it can be daunting. This isn't daunting at all. At its absolute center, percentile based skill things, and if you have to default for something, multiply a characteristic by 5, and that's the percentile thing. So if I need to know, can I beat this guy at arm wrestling? Good. Multiply your strength by 5. That's the skill percentage you're going to be using for, an out-and-out strength roll, or an out-and-out, dexterity thing, or an out-and-out charisma thing. So just so easy. The power characteristic is so useful because it started out in RuneQuest as basically magical power points, a power bank that you can draw on to cast magic. And then in came some other interesting things, like you could get allied spirits, or you could store power in like an altar or a brazier, or a staff or a magic item. Great, interesting. But they're using this to power superpowers, to power your psychic powers and so on, shamanism, all these sorts of things, all in here, and that's great. But they've got some other interesting options. What if you want to use something like fate points, give people more control over their fate? So they have an optional system there where you can burn temporary power points to do things like re-roll a dice, to lower some damage you've taken, to up the damage that you've done. So you can use this as a bit of a bank to influence the game, and I think that's valuable. And it's not little kind of niggly fate points the way you often get in games. You're actually having to make a resource management decision, because you need these power points for other things. But if you're going to use it for that re-roll, or use it for that reduction of damage or what have you, do it. But you're going to be spending 3 or 5 or 6 points from a 3d6 total characteristic to do it. So a serious chunk of your resources will go. So yeah, I think that's a good option, by the way. And like I said, if you wanted to run Venture Brothers or whatever, this is the only game system that can do all of it. But it would be a great Star Warsy game, or Star Wars adjacent, a fantastic Star Trek game. It would be just whatever you want, it's there. And that's the strength, and that's why it's lasted, and that's why it's been worth them building on it to make a newer, shinier version, one that's easier to play. There are a lot of old niggles in the old thing with moving things up and down percentage points. Now, is it difficult to use a skill? I'm trying to I'm trying to find my rifle from a galloping horse. Well, that's more difficult than standing. You just halve the chance. I've got 60% with my rifle. Good. 30% if I'm firing from a riding horse. Unless I'm skilled in riding the horse, in which case that comes in as a factor. My skill means that they both plane out. Just such a good system. And worth reading and rereading, because there's a lot of nuances in it, and anything you want is in there. Like that wonderful picture of Carly taking photos of herself. I looked at it. Wait, multiple arms. Where are they? Is that like yeah, you'll find it under mutations for the post-apocalypse thing, where you can pick different mutations and so on for your post-apocalyptic creatures. Multiple limbs. Here we go. What does that do for you? Wait, so I could mix and match both, because it's all one system. I could do something where, well, Carly obviously has magical powers, but also has multiple limbs. I'm just buying them out of the same budget. So it's just that flexibility is so good. And it allows you to do things like design alien creatures. If you're playing a sword and planet thing, or, a crazy space opera, so easy to design alien creatures, picking powers from them so that, sure, this thing is, it's a green Martian that's 15 foot tall, huge size, multiple limbs, fantastic. But it's come from my budget of other things, so I can put those out as player characters and not have guys who are just playing human be at a disadvantage. Hi, Birdie. So, yeah, worthwhile getting. My game of choice, because you can do so much with it. It's been a game that I've been able to love and enjoy in its many different iterations. I've enjoyed games of their Hawkmoon, which is a book series I love. I've enjoyed Call of Cthulhu. I've enjoyed Elric and Stormbringer. Original first and second edition RuneQuest rocked my world as a teenager. I adored those. But Ringworld, Superworld, Magic World, all these things that they've done have withstood the test of time, and that distilled experience of fun, all in here. Worth it. The thinking man's universal game system. Quite simply, and very accessible. It's on the Chaosium website. I honestly suggest you go and look for it and enjoy it. Anyway, as Mr. Snoots and I, we're signing off from Bali. I will be back in my usual digs, and I will see you all around the games table someday, I hope. Look after yourselves. It's your world. Go out and enjoy it. Be of good cheer. Keep gaming. Love to everyone. Bye.